Hey, I'm Scott Salzman. Previously, I talked about the first 3 steps an inventor needs to take to bring their product to market. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the next steps you need to take, which is building prototypes. And you want to build a prototype so your product doesn't look like that when it's actually supposed to look like that. So let's get into it. I've been inventing and designing products for more than 20 years. I have over a dozen products that I've been selling to people and businesses all over the world. Stay tuned to the end of the video and I'm going to give you a great resource on where you can go to get help with your prototype. The first reason you want to build a prototype is to see if your product can actually be made. It's one thing to draw your product on a piece of paper, but it's another thing to actually have your product made and see if it can actually be constructed. And I learned this the hard way with my spotless paw glove. I went to Joann's Fabric and I bought a bunch of fabric and I asked if there was anyone there that could help me build the sample. And what I thought all you needed to do was to just trace your fingers on a piece of paper, cut it out and do that again and sew the 2 pieces together. When I went to her house to pick up my sample, she showed me that. I was devastated. I couldn't believe how ridiculous this product looked. Well, what I learned was you actually needed this green strip here called a gusset. Once I learned about that strip, we were able to create a pattern for my product, which we use for the manufacturing process. The second reason you want to build a prototype is to test and see if your product actually works. That's called proof of concept. Once you build your product, you want to see if it actually functions and performs the way it's supposed to. When I was creating my desk cat bed, I had to go through this process as well. When I first designed the product, I had an engineer do some computer drawings for me and they looked beautiful. We 3D printed some samples. We put the samples together and it still looked great. We tested them and for a little while they worked fine. But eventually the plastic parts started to crack and it became dangerous because they would have broken and the cats could have fallen. So we had to redesign the product and then redesign it again and again. I think I went through like 3 or 4 different models. And what we finally learned is that the product couldn't be made out of plastic. We realized that we had to make the mount out of steel, and that's how the product is going to be made now. Had we not built samples and prototypes and tested them, we could have spent tens of thousands of dollars on tooling for the plastic parts, even more money manufacturing a product. And what would happen was we would have had all this money invested into a product that was defective and we couldn't sell. Had we not built the prototypes, we never would have learned that. The third reason you want to prototype your product is for the licensing process. When you license your product, one of the hardest and most difficult steps is actually getting your foot in the door with a company you want to license to. So when you show up for a meeting, you want to offer them everything you have. If you show up with just a piece of paper, it doesn't work nearly as well as if you show up with a working prototype that they can see, they can put in their hands, they can feel it, they can test it, they can see it. It gives you a huge advantage to show up with the prototype and you have a greater chance of licensing your product to another company. I mentioned at the beginning of the video a resource I was going to tell you about that can help with your prototypes. That's a website called Fiverr. I've got a link to Fiverr in the description below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Also, if you want to learn more about the invention process, please subscribe to this channel and remember to hit the like button. I really appreciate you watching. Thank you.